November 2nd, 1944. It's mid-afternoon, around 3:47 p.m., high above the rugged landscapes of Czechoslovakia. Lieutenant Bruce Carr stares in disbelief as the oil pressure needle on his P-51 Mustang plummets to zero. Thick, acrid black smoke billows from the engine cowling, obscuring his view through the canopy. The powerful Rolls-Royce Merlin engine lets out a tortured screech, like metal tearing itself apart. Just half a minute earlier, he was at the helm of a daring strafing attack on a German airfield, unleashing fury on enemy planes and installations below. Now, he's piloting what feels like a doomed machine, hurtling through hostile skies. An 88mm anti-aircraft shell fragment had ripped through the engine bay, slicing the oil line clean. Without lubrication, that Merlin powerhouse would seize up in under 2 minutes. Once it does, the propeller turns into a useless weight, dragging the sleek Mustang down like a stone. Carr knows his choices are slim. He yanks the canopy open, inverts the aircraft in a desperate roll, and tumbles out into the biting cold of the European sky. At 8,000 feet, his parachute blossoms above him, a fragile silk lifeline. Below stretches nothing but enemy-controlled land, as far as the eye can see. He's deep in occupied territory, roughly 200 miles behind German lines. No radio to call for help, no rifle, just a .45 pistol with a mere 7 rounds. No rations, no water. It's November in Central Europe, where nights plunge below freezing, turning the ground into an icy trap. The odds of survival are grim, backed by cold statistics from the war. American pilots downed in enemy territory faced about a 23% chance of evading capture and making it back to Allied forces. The rest? They ended up in POW camps like Stalag Luft III, or worse, in shallow, forgotten graves. But Bruce Carr wasn't one to bow to statistics. In the next 4 days, he wouldn't just slip away, he'd pull off something unprecedented, commandeering one of the Luftwaffe's top fighter planes and flying it straight back to safety. Bruce Ward Carr entered the world on January 28, 1924, in the quiet town of Union Springs, New York. His early years were typical of a rural American boy: farm chores, school, and the simple rhythms of small-town life. But one passion set him apart from his peers: aviation. At just 15 years old, in the summer of 1939, Carr got his first taste of the skies. That year was pivotal. As he took those initial flights, the world was igniting. On September 1st, Germany invaded Poland, sparking World War II. Across the ocean, a teenage farm kid couldn't foresee how his newfound skill would thrust him into the heart of global conflict. Yet, instinctively, he grasped that mastering flight could define his future. It started innocently enough. A local crop duster named Earl, spotting the boy's enthusiasm, let him grip the controls of an old biplane during a routine spraying run. The vibration of the engine, the rush of wind, the earth falling away. Carr was captivated from that first ascent. By age 16, he'd logged more hours in the air than many military trainees. He practiced loops, stalls, and landings on makeshift fields, honing instincts that would later save his life countless times. This wasn't formal training, it was raw, hands-on experience, the kind that builds unbreakable confidence. As the war escalated, Carr's path crystallized. On September 3, 1942, at 18 years old, he enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces. Entering the aviation cadet program, fate smiled on him. His instructor was none other than Earl, the same mentor who'd introduced him to flying. Reviewing Carr's logbook with its impressive 240 hours, Earl pushed for the accelerated track. By August 1943, Carr earned his wings as a flight officer. 6 months later, in February 1944, he arrived in England, joining the 380th Fighter Squadron of the 363rd Fighter Group in the 9th Air Force. His mount, the legendary P-51 Mustang. The P-51 Mustang stood as a pinnacle of wartime engineering, a game-changer in the aerial battles over Europe. With drop tanks, it boasted a range of over 1,650 miles, allowing it to shepherd bombers deep into Germany and back. It screamed to a top speed of 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, and could climb to a service ceiling of 41,900 feet. Armed with 6.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns carrying 1,880 rounds, it could dismantle an enemy bomber in seconds. Before the Mustang's widespread deployment, U.S. bombing campaigns were bloodbaths. In October 1943, the 8th Air Force lost 60 bombers in one raid over Schweinfurt, easy prey for Luftwaffe fighters without escorts. The P-51 flipped the script, providing long-range protection that decimated German pilot ranks. Luftwaffe aces dubbed them long-nosed devils, as their appearance signaled the end of easy victories. Carr bonded with the Mustang immediately. Its cockpit enveloped him perfectly, controls crisp and intuitive, visibility unmatched. He christened his plane Angel's Playmate, a nod to its graceful lethality. Little did he know that in mere months, he'd trade it for a cockpit stamped with enemy insignia. His combat debut came on March 8, 1944. Spotting a Messerschmitt Bf 109 over German soil, Carr pursued relentlessly. The enemy pilot dove low, skimming treetops in a bid to escape. Carr matched him mile for mile, over 40 miles at speeds topping 400 miles per hour. His bursts missed at first, but persistence paid off. A single round nicked the 109's wing. Panicked, the German ejected too low. His chute barely opened before impact. The plane smashed into a hillside. Back at base, Carr anticipated praise, but his CO reprimanded him for reckless low-level flying. The kill wasn't credited. Technically, the pilot's error caused the crash. It was an early sign. Carr played by his own rules, turning risks into triumphs where others saw folly. By May 1944, Carr transferred to the elite 353rd Fighter Squadron of the 354th Fighter Group, the pioneer Mustang Group, the first to wield P-51s in European combat. Among these top pilots, he thrived. On June 17, 1944, just days after D-Day's Normandy invasion, he shared credit for downing a Focke-Wulf FW-190 over French skies, aiding the Allied push inland. 2 months later, promotion to second lieutenant followed. September 12, 1944, marked another feat. Carr's flight ravaged a German airfield, torching several Junkers Ju-88 bombers on the tarmac. En route home, they ambushed 30 FW-190s below. Without pause, Carr dove in, claiming 3 in a frantic 3-minute melee. When his wingman took hits, Carr shielded him back to safety, prioritizing loyalty over personal glory. For this valor, he earned the Silver Star, the military's second-highest honor for bravery. As autumn deepened, Carr's tally grew. On October 29, he felled 2 more Bf-109s over Germany, crossing the ace threshold with 7.5 confirmed kills. But fortune turned on November 2. Shot down, he hit the frozen Czechoslovakian earth with a jolt, spraining his ankle severely. He buried his parachute swiftly, knowing search parties would swarm. The strafed airfield lay about 5 miles north. Defying logic, Carr headed toward it. Germans would fan out assuming he'd flee south or west, advancing deeper into their turf might buy him time. Plus, the base promised essentials, food, water, perhaps arms, to fuel his escape. Day 1 blurred in pain and caution. Limping through dense woods, he avoided paths, moving mostly under night's cover. His thin flight suit offered scant protection against the chill. Each step inflamed his ankle. Hunger gnawed, but he pressed on, rationing energy. Day 2 brought a small mercy, a clear stream for water, though its icy bite stung. Spotting a patrol 200 yards off, he froze in a muddy ditch for hours, heart pounding as boots crunched nearby. By day 3, starvation clawed deeper. Trekking and evading burned thousands of calories daily, with nothing to replenish. His body began breaking down muscle for fuel, weakening him further. Surrender loomed as a grim but viable option. Luftwaffe camps for airmen, like Stalag Luft III, were known for relative decency. Fellow pilots respected across lines. 3 meals, Red Cross aid, mail from home. Better than perishing alone in the wild. On day 4, as dusk settled, Carr reached the airfield's fringe, concealed in a tree line east of the perimeter. Through foliage, he eyed hangars, fuel depots, and planes, mostly FW-190s, a few Bf-109s. His plan, wait till dawn, approach the gate hands high. But as night deepened, opportunity shifted. A revetment 80 yards away housed a camouflaged FW-190. Mechanics tinkered under lights, topping fuel, revving the engine, running checks. They powered down, draped the cockpit, and departed. The plane sat primed, unguarded. Carr's mind raced. He'd never flown German hardware, couldn't read the language, but flying was universal. Throttle, stick, pedals obeyed physics, not politics. Surrender faded, audacity ignited. He waited till 3 a.m., airfield hushed save for distant sentries. Crossing the open expanse, he crouched low, ankle protesting fiercely. 40 seconds later, he reached the beast. The Focke-Wulf FW-190 loomed larger up close, 34-foot wingspan, 29-foot length, over 7,000 pounds empty, heavier than his Mustang. Its cockpit perched high behind armored glass. The BMW 801 radial engine dominated the nose, a 14-cylinder monster churning 1,700 horsepower. Introduced in 1941, the FW-190 shocked allies, outmatching early Spitfires and prompting frantic upgrades. Nicknamed Butcherbird by Germans for its predatory prowess, it terrified foes with speeds up to 408 miles per hour and armament of 2 13mm machine guns plus 4 20mm cannons. This A8 variant, common in late 44, packed 500-mile range, lethal in skilled hands. Carr wasn't skilled in it, yet. Climbing in, he noted the cramped space, knees brushing panels. Labels mocked him in German script. Gauges puzzled, airspeed likely top left, altimeter center, engine dials right. He traced systems methodically in the dark hours before dawn. Fuel selector, magnetos, prop control, he pieced it together. The starter, a T-handle on the right, inscribed with unfamiliar words. Pushing it word an inertia mechanism, pulling engaged. The engine coughed alive, thunderous even at idle. Alarms would blare, time evaporated. No runway hunt, he firewalled the throttle. The FW-190 surged, tail rising quick, nose heavy and eager. Aiming between hangars, ground crew stirred, yelling. At 90 miles per hour, he rotated. The plane vaulted skyward, skimming roofs by feet. Airborne in a purloined Predator, 200 miles from freedom. Now, mastery mid-flight. Gear lever left. Thunk, up it went. Compass west-southwest to France. He hugged treetops at 50 feet, 280 miles per hour, blurring forests below. Radar blind, flak-proof, too swift for infantry. Fuel full, range ample for the 200-mile dash. 4:45 minutes, he threaded dawn's light, terrain shifting from woods to fields to war-torn France. Crossing lines, irony struck. Allied gunners saw a foe, unleashing tracers. No radio to clarify, markings screamed enemy. He dove lower, 20 feet, hedge-hopping, prop stirring dust. Civilians scattered, soldiers fired small arms. Hits pinged the airframe, but German build endured. Spotting home base, A66 near Conti, France, he prepped landing. Gear stubborn, lever futile. Unaware of the hydraulic selector, he opted belly in. Aligning grass strip, flaps down, throttle cut. Touchdown at 90 miles per hour, sliding 300 yards in mud spray. Surrounded by MPs, rifles up, demanding surrender. Canopy back, Carr emerged. I'm Lieutenant Carr of this damn squadron. Disbelief reigned, he'd been MIA 4 days. Colonel George Bickle arrived, eyeing the wreck. Carr, where the hell have you been? Word spread like wildfire. The Mustang pilot returned in a Focke-Wulf. But war raged on. 5 months after his improbable return in a stolen Focke-Wulf, the war in Europe was entering its final, desperate phase. By April 1945, the Allies had pushed deep into Germany from both east and west. The Luftwaffe, once a formidable force, was a shadow of itself, short on fuel, spare parts, and above all, experienced pilots. Yet pockets of fierce resistance remained, and on April 2, 1945, near the industrial city of Schweinfurt, First Lieutenant Bruce Carr would face one of the largest concentrations of German fighters still able to take to the sky. Carr was leading a flight of 4 P-51 Mustangs on a routine armed reconnaissance mission at 15,000 feet when he glanced upward and saw them, a massive formation of enemy aircraft stacked in layers from 18,000 to 25,000 feet. He counted quickly, 60, perhaps more. A mix of late-model Messerschmitt Bf-109 G10s and long-nosed Focke-Wulf Fw-190 D9s, some of the best variants the Germans ever produced. These were not the exhausted, poorly trained pilots of recent months. Many still knew how to fight. Standard doctrine was clear. 4 Mustangs against 60 enemy fighters, with the Germans holding both altitude and numerical superiority, meant only one sensible course. Break off, report the sighting, and let heavier forces deal with it. Engaging would be suicidal. Every training manual, every pre-mission briefing, every survival instinct screamed the same thing: disengage. Bruce Carr had never been much for manuals. He keyed his microphone with calm certainty. Engaging. His 3 wingmen didn't hesitate. They had flown with him long enough to know that when Carr said those words, impossible things tended to follow. The 4 Mustangs rolled upward and climbed straight into the heart of the German formation. The Germans were caught completely off guard. They were cruising in loose defensive boxes, likely en route to intercept an incoming bomber stream, conserving fuel and expecting no trouble from below. 4 American fighters charging directly at them made no tactical sense, until it was too late. Carr slipped into the rear of the formation, unseen amid the confusion. His first target, a Bf-109, never knew he was there. A short, precise burst from 6.50 calibers tore the Messerschmitt apart in a bright orange fireball. Carr rolled away, already lining up an Fw-190. 3 seconds of fire sent the Dora spiraling earthward, trailing thick black smoke. The German formation began to break apart in panic. Pilots scattered, unsure how many Americans were among them or where the next attack would come from. Carr moved through the chaos like a predator in tall grass. Third kill, a Bf-109 that tried to turn away too late. Fourth, an Fw-190 that rolled inverted and dove, only to disintegrate under concentrated fire. Fifth, another Messerschmitt that exploded so violently the shockwave rocked Carr's Mustang. In less than 4 minutes, Bruce Carr had destroyed 5 enemy aircraft. His wingmen, feeding off his momentum and exploiting the disarray, claimed 10 more between them. 15 German fighters gone, plumes of smoke marking their graves across the German countryside. Not a single American aircraft was lost. When their ammunition ran dry, Carr led the flight in a smooth disengagement and turned for home. Behind them, the surviving 45 German pilots scattered in every direction, their formation shattered and their mission abandoned. 1 week later, on April 9, 1945, Bruce Carr was promoted to captain. For his actions that day he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest decoration for valor, surpassed only by the Medal of Honor. The citation praised his complete disregard for personal safety in the face of overwhelming enemy superiority, noting that he personally destroyed 5 aircraft and damaged another while leading his small element to victory. With those 5 kills in a single engagement, Carr became the last American pilot in the European theater to achieve ace in a day status, 5 or more victories in one mission. No one would match the feat before Germany's surrender less than a month later. By war's end, official records credited Captain Bruce Carr with 14 confirmed aerial victories, though some sources list 15, plus numerous aircraft destroyed on the ground during strafing runs. He had flown 172 combat missions in Europe alone, a staggering number that spoke to both his skill and his relentless drive. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945, but Bruce Carr's service did not. He remained in the Air Force, transitioning to the jet age as a member of the Acrojets, the United States' first jet aerobatic demonstration team, flying the sleek Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star. Precision formations, thunderous afterburners, and crowds roaring below. It was a different kind of flying, but the same man at the controls. When war broke out in Korea in 1950, Carr was there. Now a major, he flew 57 combat missions in the F-86 Sabre with the 336th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, tangling with MiG-15s over the Yalu River in the infamous MiG Alley. He later commanded the 336th from 1955 to 1956, earning the Eagle insignia of a full colonel. Vietnam called next. In 1968 to 1969, at age 44, Colonel Carr flew 286 combat missions in the F-100 Super Sabre, delivering close air support to ground troops, bombing supply lines, and strafing enemy positions. Much the same dangerous work he had done a quarter-century earlier over Europe, only now under jungle canopies and in monsoon rains. 3 wars. 3 generations of fighter aircraft. More than 500 combat missions total. Few men in American military aviation history have seen as much action across as many decades as Bruce Carr. It does not mention the 4 freezing days behind enemy lines. It does not mention crawling across an open airfield to steal a Focke-Wulf FW-190. It does not mention figuring out German instruments by touch in the dark, or taking off between hangars while ground crew shouted in alarm. It does not mention hedge-hopping 200 miles while every anti-aircraft gun in France tried to shoot him down, only to belly-land on his own airfield with MPs aiming rifles at his head. Some chapters of a man's life are simply too large for a headstone. In 1997, 1 year before his death, Carr received an invitation from Kermit Week's Fantasy of Flight Museum in Polk City, Florida. A beautifully restored P-51D Mustang was available, kept airworthy for special events. At 73 years old, Carr climbed into the cockpit one more time. He took off and came roaring over the crowd at full throttle, barely 50 feet off the deck, the same low, screaming approach he had used 53 years earlier when returning in the stolen FW-190. Then he pulled up into a series of maneuvers that defied age, tight loops, slow rolls, high G turns that would challenge pilots half his years. The Mustang danced through the sky as if time had stood still. When he landed and taxied to a stop, a reporter asked what had been going through his mind up there. Carr shrugged, a faint grin on his face. Same thing I always thought. What's this airplane capable of? What am I capable of? Let's find out. That was the essence of Bruce Carr, not the stolen fighter plane, not the 15 kills, not the 3 wars or the medals. It was the mindset. When faced with impossible odds, most people see limits. Bruce Carr saw possibilities. When the rational choice was surrender or retreat, he asked a different question: what else can I do? In a war filled with extraordinary acts of courage, his story stands apart, not because he was fearless, but because he refused to accept that the story had to end the way everyone expected. A downed pilot behind enemy lines could surrender or die trying to escape. Carr chose a third path no one had written down. 60 enemy fighters against 4 friendly ones could retreat or be destroyed. Carr chose to attack, and won. That refusal to accept limited options defined him from the crop duster fields of upstate New York to the jet streams over Korea and the jungle skies of Vietnam. Bruce Carr didn't just fly airplanes. He pushed them, and himself, to the edge of what was considered possible, and then a little further. And in doing so, he showed that sometimes the greatest victories aren't measured in enemy aircraft destroyed or medals pinned to a chest. They're measured in the quiet, stubborn decision to keep looking for one more option when everyone else has already given up.